So what's up people, and welcome to another Alita Battle Angel / GUNNM video. So with the release of the DVD, aside from the movie, there were additional information that were provided. And one of the interesting ones was titled The Fall. Now this video was introduced to me by Revan, and ever since I saw his video discussing this, I wanted to see this additional piece of information. And when I saw the video, I have to agree with him that there is quite a bit of information about the Alita Battle Angel cinematic universe. And what's interesting is there are some similarities, but also several differences, key differences with regards to the source material. And so that is why I wanted to create this video to quickly and briefly go over some of these differences. Now before I do so, I will give a brief spoiler alert. It's not much of a spoiler since the DVD is out and anybody can get their hands on the DVD. So if you don't want to be spoiled, yeah, go get the DVD and watch it. It's a lot of fun to watch the movie. Anyway, yeah, there is some information, additional information. And I will be going over the similarities and differences compared to what you see in the source material and make some additional assumptions or speculations based upon some of the differences that you see. So if you don't want to hear any of this, then I would suggest that you turn off the video, and as always, please watch at your discretion. Now of course the fall refers to the Great War, and basically the fall of the civilization of Earth during that Great War. And one of the things that of course is implied through some of the information here is that unlike the source material, it indicates that the Great Geocatastrophe did not occur in the Alita Battle Angel cinematic universe. However, what is very similar is that Earth started colonizing space. However, from what we can tell, the colonization occurred in Mars, but did not go beyond that point to Venus or Jupiter. So from the Alita Battle Angel cinematic universe, basically the Earth that we know, the governments that we know, kept moving forward to the point where there was colonization that started. And of course Mars was the first planet to be colonized. However, by the time Mars was already colonized and before any of the other planets could be colonized, there was already tension occurring between the colonized new civilization of Mars and the original, foundation of Earth. And the war that was created only fell between the two planets, Mars and Earth. And this is of course very different from the source material where you of course had Mars, Earth, Venus, and Jupiter. Now although this may reduce the vastness of the cinematic world compared to the source material world, I don't think I mind this too much because of the fact that this will actually simplify a lot of things, which in this case I don't mind. I don't think this is really a dumbed down situation, although you do lose the different kind of persona of the various governments. However, when you're in the cinematic universe and you can't have the time to really, absorb a lot of this, it may turn out that if you have too many governments, then it may end up being too confusing. So by having just Mars and Earth, this may simplify things to make it a little bit more understandable for anybody who just comes in to look at the cinematic universe through the movies rather than through the source material. And if there's ever a necessity to go to the Last Order source material, then this can be corrected because of the fact that of course the fall occurred 300 years ago. And assuming that Mars is still surviving even after the war, and they're kind of separated. They're both so hurt that they decided that they will not attack each other anymore. Then there may be a possibility that you could still create the colonies of Venus and Earth. I mean, not Venus and Earth, Venus and Jupiter. through Mars. Basically, Mars may have expanded during those 300 years to start populating Venus and Jupiter. And that may then create the world as we see in Last Order, and that will give it, for example, if you want to have the Zot championship between the four worlds, then you can do that. Because, a Zot championship between two worlds may feel very small. Now, to relieve the question of then if there was proper civilization in all these countries, how could you have only one sky city remaining, was actually pretty well brought up in this little video called The Fall. And I thought this was actually a pretty creative idea. This was the one area which I found to be very interesting for the cinematic universe, which was, of course, the usage of nanomachine viruses to infect the population of Earth. And it was through this rapid spread of this extremely harmful nanomachine virus, which I don't know what it is, but basically decimated the population in the rest of the world. And the reason why Zalem survived is from what it seems like, there was a shield that was created around Zalem, and that prevented the nanomachines from being able to come in. So from what it seems like, beyond a certain point, even in the Badlands, if you can get out there, it still may be contaminated by these nanomachines. And this provides a very interesting opportunity. So for one thing, this gives an understanding of why the Kunstlers were attacking Zalem by, personally, rather than through this infection. If the shield got created, then of course, if Mars wanted to take down the entire governments of Earth, then to be able to take out Zalem, they needed to bring down the shields. And so the Kunstlers may have been sent in to try to, take down the shields from inside Zalem. Similar to how, you always see this in Star Wars, where they send a small troop in to take out the shields, and then, of course, the X-Wing fighters and the Y-Wing bombers can come in. In this case, of course, the Kunstlers, all they needed to do was take down the shields, and then the nanomachine virus would spread, and basically Mars could then pull back and just wait for the nanomachine virus to just take out all the people in Zalem. But for whatever reason, the Kunstlers failed. And so this would, of course, explain why Alita ends up in the trash heap. It's very different, of course, from what we see in the comic verse. But I may not mind it all that much. It's a lot more simple and a lot more, I guess, typical a science fiction type story to see. However, it does flow well, and it does explain for why Zalem is the only surviving city, why Earth didn't grow beyond Zalem even after the fall, and why this decimation occurred without a geocatastrophe to cause it. And of course, if the Alita Battle Angel cinematic universe decides to expand into the Badlands arc, the Barjack arc and the Tuned arc, this scenario actually works really, really well. I mean, one of the problems, of course, with the Tuned arc and the Badlands arc is, of course, once Alita becomes a tuned agent for Zalem, she basically, for the next 10 years, becomes Zalem's assassin. And she does very questionable things during that time. Now, there is a reason why she agrees to do so, because of the fact that eventually there is a certain person that she wants to meet. And she figured that at this point, that has become so important that she was willing to become Zalem's puppet agent and do the things that Bigot Eisenberg asked for. However, in this situation, this may actually provide a opportunity for Alita to be a tuned agent, just like in the comic. However, there is a much more kind of ethically positive purpose for this. Assuming that there were survivors out in the Badlands who somehow got immunity. They created their own natural immune system to the virus, to these nanomachine viruses, and they were the ones that eventually created the Barjack group. Then, of course, Zalem has two purposes for sending out an agent. One, of course, is to eventually quell the resistance that's growing from the Barjack group. And second is to see if they could get samples of this immune antivirus or antitoxin or antibody or whatever it is that they need to get so that they could start creating, vaccines that will prevent the nanomachine viruses from taking over. And if that's the case, then eventually they may be able to take the shields down. And why Alita can be explained for two reasons. One, if the nanomachines were originated in Mars and her core structure is still Mars technology, then they may be able to explain that Alita has a natural immunity because of the fact that she is from the planet that created these viruses, which the Martians engineered to make sure that they weren't harmful to their own soldiers. That's a hand-waving explanation, but that's an explanation. And second, of course, is since she's a Kunstler, just like in the comic, she will be perfect as an agent because of her infiltration and battle skills. And just like in the comic, Bigot Eisenberg can recognize her skills from the Motorball, televised shows, and through getting her core and rebuilding her as a tuned agent, sent her out into the Badlands to do this mission. And this will be a very interesting thing because then they could do the majority of the Badlands arc, whether it's Den, whether it's Radio Chaos, whether it's, even Figure 4, and still, be in line with the information and the story that's different in the Alita Battle Angel cinematic universe to the Battle Angel Alita comic verse. And so this, of course, brings us to the one final difference, which, of course, is Alita's origin story. And this one, I'm not sure if I find it to be good. I'm still thinking about it. Because this image alone shows so much difference between the comics origin story and the cinematic universe origin story if they go by this short video. This is a very typical vanilla generic story. She is born, eventually, the war breaks out, her parents are killed, she somehow survives as a cyborg, and then she is turned into Panzerkunst mercenary. It's okay. It's what you would see in typical video games. You might even see it in one of those Star Wars type side stories. It's a very, very vanilla, standard, generic story. And that's why I may be a little bit against this because of the fact that, of course, one of the great things about the GUNNM universe is it's definitely not vanilla and it's definitely not generic. There's some very unique information there. And I don't know, I am really debating this because of the fact that although this is vanilla and this is generic and not as original as the origin story in the comic, maybe that is okay for a general audience because as original as Alita's origin story is in the comic, it is so disturbingly horrifying that if they actually showed that origin story from Mars Chronicle, I got a feeling people will be running out of the theater screaming. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine? From the comic, it's already disturbing and somewhat painful to read. Can you imagine seeing that on the big screen? That would be seriously horrifying. And as original as it is, I mean, I have to give, credit to Yukito Kishiro. He comes up with some of the wackiest stories out there, and when you see that it's so original, as horrifying as it is, you kind of tend to like it. But yeah, on the live screen, I don't know. I just don't know if the regular audience will want to see that. The other thing is, of course, the way you see it. What's interesting is for people who didn't read the manga, they may look at this and go, wow, Alita had a tough life growing up. And I look at this and go, wow, the Alita in the cinematic universe had such a much nicer life than the Alita in the comic verse. The Alita in the comic verse, even after that origin story and once she is born, my God, she has such a difficult and vicious and violent life. And again, that's some of those scenes that you may not want to show in a live action movie just because it might get a lot of people upset watching those scenes. Even if they do a lot of the violence off screen, I am not sure if people will be willing to accept that. I mean, there's even that orphanage, right? How Alita grew up in that orphanage and that situation when some of those soldiers attacked. I mean, that was vicious. There was so many vicious scenes in there, of which I won't describe due to spoilers, except one, just for as an example. I'm not sure how willing theater audiences will be to watch a little 6-year-old girl cross paths with a streaming rain of bullets from a fully active Vulcan cannon and basically end up being a stain on the ground, right? I mean, that was one of the scenes that you saw where she just finally gives up, sits down, looks up and goes, "Mama," and the next thing you know, all you see is a stain on the ground with a bunch of organs and guts all sprayed all over the place. I just don't think the regular audience is ready to see something like that, and that's just one of the many, many examples of what little Alita or little Yoko experiences. So yeah, I am not sure if the Mars Chronicle origin story is appropriate for the live action movie. And if that's the case, maybe as much as this is such a generic story. I wish they would have made it at least a little bit more creative. But I guess, maybe it's okay. At least it's there. And at least it's the typical sort of story that everybody can accept and move on from. So maybe that's okay. I don't know. What do you think? Anyway, that's about it, I guess. I mean, there are other things that maybe we could discuss. I'm not sure. This is a quick discussion. Just a quick view, I should say, of me looking at the fall briefly and getting some information out of it. Maybe if I think about it a little bit more, there will be more information that I could talk about. But in any case, what'd you think about the fall for anybody who watched it from the DVD? And if you could give your comments, as always, I would appreciate it, because as always, you guys bring out some great, great comments. I learned so much from you guys. So thank you very much in advance. And I'll continue to make more Alita Battle Angel videos in the future. By the way, I will be out of town again for the next 10 days. So I may not be able to upload any videos until after about the 9th. And then I'll try to see if I could quickly upload another Alita Battle Angel video at that time. But I apologize right from the beginning. I won't be able to upload some videos for a while, but once I get back, I will definitely start going back into uploading, Alita videos. So yeah, I hope you join me when I upload the next video. And until then, happy DVD watching, and as always, Jaya, nice day, everyone.